It's very stiff, and now I'm going to have to look for that later. Yes, well, as I ended last week's video, we do circle back effectively to the beginning with the final product. So yeah, I know it's a little unusual to tease the final product at the very beginning of the series, but I've got to try something different this time. So a little bit of a wild adventure, that's for sure. Lots of surprises, both good and bad, unfortunately, but made it through the whole process, and I have a functioning Mac Plus with 4 megs of RAM on top of that, as well as a new old stock mouse, which I showed off earlier, as well as a not new old stock keyboard, but a functioning one. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But let's go over some of the things that I did with it, just as kind of a recap so that you guys are caught up, as well as look over some little issues, go over some problems I ran into, and maybe run some software. So one of the issues that I'm going to talk about first is with the keyboard itself. Unfortunately, I dropped a spring that is used to stabilize the spacebar and stepped on it and smushed it. So I initially had decided to go with this spring here, which, if I can focus, yep, it's very stiff. And now I'm going to have to look for that later. It ended up being too stiff for the spacebar. So I tried using one of these springs here, which I had from another project, and it doesn't have enough tension on it. But I was able to find some older Commodore 64 keyboard springs that I had laying around, and it's not quite as much tension as the original spring had, but it's close enough and much easier to hit the spacebar. So it's going to be a lot more comfortable for typing, but the rest of the keys work fine and no complaints there. The next issue I want to talk about is the CRT. And if you paid attention in part 3, or if you follow me on Twitter, then you'll know that I accidentally snapped the clip inside of the anode cap, which is what latches onto the inside of the CRT, and tried to find a suitable replacement without having to have to buy a new flyback transformer, although that might still be on the cards if my fix is only temporary. But ultimately, I discovered that if I were to take a binder clip and trim it down to size, I could come up with something like this here, which is pretty darn close match for the overall shape, form, and springiness of the original clip. Of course, this is more of I don't want to call it a prototype, but it's not completed. I didn't drill a hole in the bottom of it so I could get the screw through, but it worked. For since then, I've discovered that they have non-painted clips here that are conductive as well, so I could have used something like this, but I figured, what, I've already got it working. I'll just leave it as is. Now, I do not recommend this as an actual fix, maybe as a temporary workaround so you can troubleshoot or until you can get a actual clip, but I would not recommend it as a permanent solution just because I don't know what the longevity is going to be. I don't know if it's going to cause any further damage or anything like that. So do not try this at home. The other issue I want to go over, and it might not be as easy to see on camera, at least not the camera that I've got. Let's see what I can do here. So if you look carefully here, it's a little bit of discoloration. It's not dissimilar from a zebra striping that you might see from some unsuccessful retrobrite attempts. This here, though, I suspect is because of the cleaning job that I did, or in this case, not as thorough of one. It was very dirty inside here, and I tried to clean it as best as I could, but obviously I didn't do a good enough job, and I kind of feel like that's what contributed to some of the discoloration. It's not striping necessarily, but it is discolored, but it's only noticeable if I have a bright light on it. There's also some down here below the floppy disk drive, as you can see, but it's near, again, a spot that I had to scrub a little extra hard to get rid of some of the smudges and stuff like that. There's also some scratches and gouges in the case itself that probably contributed to that as well. There's another spot, if I can get it, right here. So as much as it might annoy some people, it actually doesn't bother me that much just because of the fact it's barely noticeable. And I'd rather have a few little minor spots here and there than to have the entire thing almost orange in color. So plus there were some weird paint marks on there and things like that. So I'm okay with that. Now, in terms of the good surprises, the floppy drive working without too much maintenance, just a little bit of cleaning to remove the dust and replacing some of the lubrication, all the moving parts. I didn't have to replace the gear in the ejection mechanism, which was really good. I still have the gear in case I need to replace it in the future, but for now, if it's working, I'm not going to bother with it. And then, of course, the overall surprise that the whole thing works in the first place. So, like I said, I'm excited that I've got a working Mac Plus. I was always kind of interested in them growing up, but we never could really afford one as a family. But of course, this Mac would be useless without software. A Mac like this, unless you have multiple floppy disk drives or an external hard drive, it's very annoying to run software to begin with. You're either putting in a self-booting disk or you're constantly swapping out floppies. Now, if you've got a second floppy disk drive, not a problem. Boot from the primary, load software out the secondary, you're all set. Of course, there are other options too. Like I mentioned, external hard drive, although even nowadays, even though they're not super pricey, trying to find one that works is an issue. And even then, there's no guarantee that the SCSI drive inside is going to work forever, which we know they won't, but it could die in a day, a week, a month. So there are modern solutions though. For example, this SCSI SD here, this is the version 6. Unfortunately, this is the one without the external SCSI port, so I can't attach this to the back. In fact, I bought this one specifically for another project because it's got the internal 50-pin header on here. But there is that as an option. And there's also this as an option as well. It's the Blue SCSI project. This one is an external one. And I have already tested it and made sure that it works. So I'll go ahead and we'll plug this in and see what we can do with it. And it is booting off of the Blue SCSI. The floppy disk is not in the drive. And I've got a bunch of different images that I got from various sources online, archive.org, Macintosh Garden, and I forget where else. But I decided to just use the raw SCSI 608 image that I found and just copy some of the software to it. So, of course, we've got Mac Paint. Everyone's familiar with that by now. We don't need to save that masterpiece. And there's also, where is SimCity 1.4? I don't know if this will run on 608. I'm hoping it does. Looks like it will. And yes, this image is also compatible with the Mr. project. As you can see, it was registered to it. Let's pick Detroit 1972 because why not? But it appears to work. And that's a pretty accurate representation of Detroit. We've got Belle Isle and the downtown area here. There's sound. Interesting. I didn't know that. Looks like there's some kind of an alert up here. It's been a while since I played SimCity. It's not very fast, as you can see. Looks like the power might be out. That's pretty typical. But that seems to work fine. Let's see what else we've got on here. Everyone's favorite software, Microsoft. Wow, there's a lot of versions of Word in here. Microsoft Word, because, you know, it's important. And let's be honest, a computer this old, running something like Microsoft Word is probably going to be the most productive thing you can do with it, besides playing games. Because documents are documents. So if anyone ever tells you that, hey, these things are useless, well, now you can play games on them. Okay, great. What else can you do with it? Well, you can still type up documents, do your homework, stuff like that. So, and we will not save this either because we don't need to. And I threw Mac Basic on here because I have absolutely no idea if this is like basic or if this is something different. Let's see. All right, so I guess I didn't have to type run, but there it is. Now I have no idea how to break this. Halt, Command H, okay. So yeah, this is just basic. All right, cool. Now, I don't know if that's based off of Microsoft Basic like a lot of other retro computers were, or if it is Apple's own implementation. I guess I could have read some of the documentation, but that's no fun. And I also have Dark Side of the Mac, which should be some screensavers. I have absolutely no idea if this will work either. I don't know if this should even be copied to the system folder or anything like that. And there we go. Primitive screensavers. Is it going to hit the corner? Nope. Still doesn't hit the corner, just like modern DVD players. I'll go ahead and quit. I'm sure if I read the documentation, I could probably get that configured properly. But again, this is just for having fun, playing around, stuff like that. And we'll run one more. Let's do Super Munchers. Shadowgate's going to take some time to configure and get through to a good part, so... we'll practice. It's been a while. What game do we want to play? Let's do Aminals. Yes, I said Aminals. And we'll go with beginner. I have no idea what to do. Well, in my defense, I don't know what I'm doing here. Right whale. Technically, a ladybug's an insect. But look at that. I beat the beginner mode in Munchers, Super Munchers. We're gonna quit. And that's that. I mean, there are other games, obviously. There are much better games available for it. I mean, I do have Space Invaders on here, Star Trek Next Generation, and there's a whole host of games out there available for classic Macs that will run on 6.0.8 or newer. Now, you notice there's System Picker here, and that's because I have it configured where I can actually boot into 701, but I'm not going to because it is insanely slow and it just doesn't perform well. You really need a 68030 or a newer processor to run System 7 efficiently. The 4 gigs of RAM is not nearly enough. However, I do have this, which originally came with this Mac Plus that I removed as part of the refurbishing process, and also because I kind of feel like this is wasted. At least at the time that I got the Mac, this was wasted on a Mac Plus since it did not have an internal SCSI port, only the external one, and at the time, even external drives were pricey, and I don't believe that something like the Blue SCSI was available at the time. I think it came out, 2021 maybe? So running it off of an external hard drive would have been expensive, and just swapping floppy disks every 2 seconds would have been a waste as well. So I'm going to use this on a separate project altogether. This one does come with the 68030, as well as a math code processor, MMU unit, whatever you want to call it. So this is my contribution to Marcintosh, the refurbishing and somewhat repair of a Macintosh Plus. The entire process was actually kind of fun, and the fact that I got it working and didn't run into too many major issues actually kind of gave me some hope that I can do the same thing with the Mac SE that I have. Keep an eye out for that video at some point in the future. I'm not sure when I'll get to it, but I promise that it won't be 3 years before I get to it. So What do you guys think? Do you guys have any suggestions on any modifications, upgrades, updates, anything like that? It's already got 4 megs of RAM. I don't really need more in here. I've got the blue SCSI now, so I can run software off of a hard drive instead of a floppy disk drive, although having a working floppy disk drive is good too. If you guys have any other suggestions on programs to run, software, games, anything like that, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. But before I end this video, if this isn't enough for you from Marcintosh, there is a playlist down below in the description that you can visit that has videos from all kinds of different YouTubers, all kinds of enthusiasts of all different types of makes and models of Macintosh, different styles of video, whether it's a repair, whether they're just showing it off, talking about it. But go ahead and check that out, please. They worked really hard on all their videos and their projects, and they would really appreciate it. But that's it for this video. I do, again, appreciate you guys watching. Thanks all. I will catch you later.